The 7th of October 2024 saw KLM, the flag carrier of the Netherlands, turn 105 years old. As an airline steeped in tradition and history, KLM is no stranger to a celebration, and they can't have a birthday without a party. Airways magazine had the privilege of being invited by KLM to Amsterdam to see just how they do it. In this video, allow us to show you just how an airline celebrates its birthday. While not the airline's centenary, an airline's anniversary is still a very significant date in its calendar. KLM's birthday present to itself every year is its new Delft Blue house. We do already have a video that goes into greater detail on this topic, but here's a little rundown of how KLM came to have these houses and why it means so much to them. The Delft Blue houses are a staple of KLM's brand and are given out on their long-haul flights to their business class customers. They are filled with Dutch gin, made in the Royal Dutch Distillery, and they came into existence in 1952 as a promotional item for the airline's business class passengers. These became an instant success with their customers, but there was not yet a system for releasing them. Some years might have multiple releases and some might have none. This was rectified on KLM's 70th anniversary in 1994, when the airline elected to release one per year on their birthday, to have one for every year of their existence. And so the tradition was set, and it is said now that no Dutch house is complete without a KLM Blue house. These houses have a strong aftermarket too, with some being sold for thousands. In particular, house numbers 1 and 2 are of particular rarity. KLM usually commissions about 850,000 units per house design, however numbers may vary per batch. Naturally, those that were made in limited quantities are particularly sought after. They are all modelled after real houses in the Netherlands and Dutch Antilles that can be visited by everyone. They range from private homes to public buildings, all of which represent the history and culture of the Netherlands or a particular significance to KLM itself. Many of these houses can be found in Amsterdam itself and can be viewed from a canal cruise, which is what we, myself and the other invited journalists, were invited to partake in. Our tour was hosted by Mark Ziegling, a former Dutch TV producer turned writer, and has written an extensive book on all of the KLM Dutch houses to date. This private tour of Amsterdam, seen through the context of KLM and highlighted by arguably the highest authority when it comes to these houses, very much puts their design cues into perspective. On this tour, we passed many KLM houses, some of which even have significance outside of KLM's association with them. For example, house number 43, located on number 516 Prinsjesgracht in central Amsterdam, is reported to be the most expensive rental property in the Netherlands, with it being set at €15,000 per month. Or indeed, house number 47, the former home of Rembrandt, the famous Dutch painter. The houses give a representation of all kinds of historical buildings, regardless of their individual significance to Dutch culture. For example, at the most famous, we have the likes of the Anne Frank House or the KLM headquarters, down to the former warehouses of central Amsterdam, many of which are the canal-side houses you can see today. Or house number 104, the Valkenburg railway station. Still in use today, it's the oldest in the Netherlands, having opened in 1853. House number 105 is the so-called House on the Three Canals, located in central Amsterdam. The house dates from 1610 and is found on Oudezijds Voorburgwal, historically one of Amsterdam's most affluent neighbourhoods, earning its nicknames of the Velvet Key or Amsterdam's Gold Coast. As such, at the point of its last sale in 2023, the house ended up selling for €4.3 million. The house on the Three Canals has been home to many tenants over the years, from soap makers to stockbrokers to physicians to booksellers, and has survived occupation from Spain, France and Germany. Today, it's regarded as an architectural masterpiece, and thanks to its simple charm, it's now one of the most photographed locations in Amsterdam. But of course, we don't know that yet. It's 4:30 PM, and our tour of the canals brings us to the Grand Hotel, where tonight's unveiling is taking place. But before celebrations can begin, we're invited to a press meeting with Bas Gerritsen, Managing Director of KLM Netherlands, and the KLM CEO, Marianne Rintel. Each journalist was allowed to ask one question, and I took the opportunity to ask about the airline's group strategy regarding the proposed cap on flight movements at the airline's home base, Schiphol. CEO Marianne Rintel had this to say on the topic.
Yeah. So if you look at what the Dutch government is proposing to the EU, they propose a capacity between the 475,000 movements and the 485,000 movements. Today we are between around 480,000 movements. Our first priority is to increase our long-haul capacity ourselves. We are still at 90%. We need to grow to 100% of our long-haul route network. and therefore that is the priority. So it's always the case in the balance between a long haul and local European network, and we need to rebalance it a bit. But it needs to be between the 475 and the 485,000 movements. That's clear by now.
The event is about to begin. Along with a handful of journalists, around 200 guests are invited, ranging from KLM employees to some of the airline's most valued customers. Speaking at the event was CEO Rintel, Managing Director Gerritsen, and the guest of honour at tonight's event, Arthur van Dijk, the Commissioner of the King in the province of North Holland. At this point, I confess I couldn't understand what they were saying, as all their speeches were in Dutch. CEO Rintel did warn us about this beforehand, as it was, in her words, a very Dutch event, and indeed, what an event it was. And the language barrier made it no less special by any means. But the hour soon arrived, and it became time to unveil house number 105.
It has seen the golden age, but also occupations by Spain, France and Germany. It housed a book merchant and later a printing press for forbidden literature during World War II. It has recently been restored to its original glory, making it a livable home again. So to honor the city where it all began, KLM is proud to present het huis aan de drie grachten as its Delft Blue house number 105.
Van de zwarte gracht was Albert met van stroom. Die had na zoveel jaar verwacht dat het blauwe bloed nog stroomt. Zijn fantasie met werkelijkheid was sceptici gewonnen. Hij bracht de eerste vaste lijn van Amsterdam naar Londen. Want ons huis staat in de stad waar bijna alles kan, gehuld in ons bekende blauw in Amsterdam. De KLM, de vaste rots, al meer dan 100 jaar. Daarom staan wij hier voor rust, familie van elkaar. Zie wat ons is verloren, alweer een jarig huis. Stewardess tot aan bureau, hier voelen wij ons thuis. Want waar ons vliegen gaat van stroom, zullen we nooit vergeten. En ieder die hierheen gewoon, zal dat voor altijd weten. Want ons huis staat in de stad, waar bijna alles kan, gehuld in ons bekende blauw in Amsterdam. De KLM, de vaste rots, al meer dan 100 jaar. Daarom staan wij hier voor ons, familie van elkaar.
And there it is, the house on the three canals, now immortalised by KLM and being rolled out onto their business classes worldwide, and onto the shelves of Dutch houses to make them complete. Interestingly, this is the first KLM house with 5 sides. This is the first up-close look anybody outside of KLM has had to house number 105, and it's safe to say it's a magnificent little piece of KLM and the Netherlands as a whole. It's very easy to see how KLM's enthusiasm for these little houses has endured over the past 72 years. It's said that they're already at work selecting house number 106 for next year. Since their centenary in 2019, KLM has had many ups and downs, and the CEO has made no secret that they do indeed face headwinds. At present, the effects of the pandemic have largely worn off, but now comes new problems, such as the previously mentioned proposed slot restrictions at Schiphol, or indeed the increased price of fuel and the need to avoid Russian airspace. This increases journey times by 2 to 4 hours, requiring an additional pilot, and increases costs by around $20,000 per hour. On the upside though, KLM has officially begun a major fleet renewal. In July of this year, the airline welcomed the first of 90 Airbus narrowbodies to the fleet, with the arrival of Papa Hotel Alpha X-Ray Alpha, an Airbus A321neo, which we also have a dedicated video on, to begin the replacement of their 737NGs, some of which are pushing 20 years of age. They also expect to receive 50 Airbus A350-900s and 1000s and 4 A350 freighters from 2026 onwards. In the press conference we were invited to before the unveiling, the CEO was asked whether the houses might be cut as a cost-saving measure. Her response was a resounding no, given that these houses are not only a staple of KLM and the wider Dutch national brand, but also a unique selling point that many airlines simply don't have. In a world where airlines are cutting routes to destinations such as China after being undercut by not being able to fly over Russia, among other problems, these houses are arguably a great extra incentive for passengers, being able to collect another house at the cost of 2 extra hours in the air. KLM is an airline that is very proud of its history. They have a great appreciation for their nation and clearly take showing it off to the rest of the world very seriously indeed. They also know how to throw a fantastic party. Thanks to KLM, these houses have become synonymous with them and the Netherlands as a whole, and provide a sense of community among KLM passengers in a quaint and unique way that isn't complicated or confusing. There's no need for a backstory or context. This is a way that KLM makes passengers feel like the trip has only just begun or isn't quite over, by making the journey that little bit more memorable. While it's true that KLM has some very difficult decisions to make in the coming months, it's fantastic to see that they're still keeping their traditions alive and still knowing where they came from. And with house number 105 now released, we'll all be very eager to see what house number 106 looks like next year. Who told you we were done? Sit back down. Nearly done now, but a few words have to be said about the flight back to London from Amsterdam. I was on board KLM City Hopper Flight 1013 to London Heathrow, and not only were we blessed with spectacular weather over the North Sea, but it also has to be said that the crew were some of the best I've ever flown with. Unassuming as I originally was, during the drink service I made the crew aware of my reason for being in Amsterdam in the first place, and asked if they wanted to see House 105, which I had in my bag. They were a bit shocked at first. They might not have been aware that a new house was even being released. But as a thank you for showing them in the first place, the cabin crew presented me with a bag with all sorts of things, from wine to snacks to cards, a Delft Blue mug, and also a handwritten note from the flight crew thanking me for showing them. I had never experienced that on a flight before. They even told the pilots that House 105 was on board, and they too were very excited to see it after landing. But it turned out that we wouldn't be on the ground quite as quickly as we anticipated. Watch this.
Had to do with the fact that just before landing we received quite a gust from the weather around here, and it pushed up us too far in the air to make a safe landing. We're now in the process of another approach and bringing you safely to Heathrow. I thank you very much for your understanding, and if you have any questions I'll be happy to answer them once we are at the gate.
I had never experienced a go-around before, and counterintuitive as it may seem to most, this was one of my bucket list things to experience. And it also gave me the opportunity to see my house from the air, which is something which is notoriously difficult for me to do. After that steep left-hand turn, we climbed up to 4,600 feet for our second attempt, and, save for some decently spicy turbulence in a cloud we flew through, we made it back to London Heathrow safe and sound, touching down smoothly on runway 27 left and returning to stand 1A at Terminal 4. But all wasn't yet over, as I still had to visit the pilots. It's been a while since I visited the flight deck, and I maintain that it's something that everyone should do at least once in their lives if they get the chance. I have to extend a personal thank you to the crew of KLM Flight 1013 for the almost celebrity treatment I received on board their aircraft that day. While it's understandable that they didn't want to be filmed, they have to be highly commended for their friendliness and professionalism.